According to the Challenger layoff report, U.S. hiring is now at its lowest level since the Great Recession, with employers already laying off nearly 1 million workers this year. And rather than every headline pretending to blame AI for mass layoffs, I'm going to break down the real reason companies are actually gutting the workforce. While the nation's labor force has continuously been sold the illusion of a robust job market, one defined by record levels of low unemployment, the reality is that the last 5 years have been nothing more than a complete facade, with every metric and revision simply comparing our modern job market to the worst economic catastrophe since the Great Depression. And just like during the Great Recession, when corporations and government alike made it clear that the livelihoods of the average American were the least of their concerns, today's modern layoffs once again prove that beneath the supposed return to office mandates and the rise of AI dominance lies a coordinated effort to conceal the truth that the powers that be cannot replace and outsource American workers fast enough, a pattern that has remained consistent since the 1960s. To absorb the influx of unemployed Mexican laborers and offset rising industrial costs in the US, the two governments established the Border Industrialization Program, or BIP, in 1965. It encouraged American corporations to build twin plants, or maquiladoras, along the US-Mexico border, where raw materials could be imported, duty-free, assembled by Mexican workers earning between 33 and 50 cents an hour compared to the roughly $2.50 for American workers, and then be exported back to the US with tariffs applied only to the value added during production. And while it was marketed as a Cold War measure to secure America's southern border and reduce illegal immigration, the BIP quickly evolved into the foundation of modern cross-border outsourcing. By the 1980s, the maquiladora system had expanded from a handful of factories to over 1,000 plants, and with the peso's repeated devaluations, American corporations took further advantage, driving wages even lower and deepening the exploitation of an already underpaid workforce, where the surge in profitability drew in major U.S. manufacturers like Ford Motor Company and General Electric. Ford hollowed out Detroit's industrial base, relocating over 20,000 jobs to its assembly plant in Sonora, while General Electric offshored more than 10,000 positions as it expanded operations in Tijuana. And by the time labor unions began lobbying Congress over the increasing losses of American jobs, the media had already reframed the crisis as progress, justifying mass layoffs and community collapse under the illusion of cheaper goods and greater consumer savings. And while the United States faced rising inflation and sought to maintain stability in East Asia, President Jimmy Carter's 1979 reduction of tariffs on Chinese imports gave American corporations a powerful new incentive to move production overseas. Among the first to capitalize on this shift was General Electric CEO Jack Welch, who under his leadership initiated one of the earliest and largest waves of American manufacturing jobs being outsourced abroad, eliminating roughly 115,000 domestic positions between 1981 and 1985. Welch also laid the groundwork for white-collar outsourcing, establishing GE service centers in Gurgaon, India, to exploit lower engineering wages. As he famously put it, ideally you'd have every plant you own on a barge, capturing the emerging corporate mindset that American jobs were no longer foundational assets, but disposable costs to be minimized. Fortune magazine later celebrated that philosophy, naming Welch its Manager of the Century in 1999. And while the nation's workforce was already feeling the impact of mass offshoring, the Reagan administration began transforming that corporate mindset into political strategy. Robert Bonatotti, one of the architects behind Reagan's labor outreach, openly detailed how the administration's messaging was deliberately crafted to appear focused on restoring prosperity for hardworking Americans. In attempting to influence blue-collar workers, it is possible to target politically appealing messages to that group by emphasizing jobs, job creation, and the direct benefit to workers of our efforts to revitalize the economy. Blue-collar workers seem to have been susceptible to such messages and found them very appealing during the 1980 campaign. Some thought might be also given to staging events that emphasize job creation or economic growth. Unfortunately, many politically appealing messages that could be transmitted to blue-collar workers, like limiting auto and steel imports to preserve American jobs, just don't make good policy sense. Between 1981 and 1989, more than 1.6 million American jobs were offshored to Japan, Mexico, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, placing enormous downward pressure on job quality and wages. And while headlines praised the 16.1 million jobs created during Reagan's 2 terms, they failed to mention that only 28% were in high school occupations, with 12.5 million concentrated in low-wage service work, such as waitstaff, janitorial services, and retail. And as high school graduates increasingly filled these low-wage positions, Their paths for advancements also narrowed, driving a broader collapse in wages. During this period, earnings for young men fell from $12.19 in 1979 to $8.72 in 1995, while wages for young women declined from $9.01 to $7.43. Where after a decade of industrial decline, the 1990s marked the largest transformation of the American workforce under President Bill Clinton. Trade agreements such as NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China opened U.S. markets to aggressive import competition. Between 1994 and 2001, more than 879,000 American jobs were officially certified as lost to trade under the government's Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, with economists estimating the real number was 2 to 3 times higher. Meanwhile, headlines celebrated rising household incomes and the creation of 22 million jobs, the most of any presidency, but of course, those gains were largely an illusion. Alongside record bankruptcy rates, American families only appeared wealthier because they were working longer hours than ever before. By 1998, the typical middle-income household worked 3,885 hours a year, 247 hours, or roughly 6 additional weeks more than in 1989. American workers were now putting in more hours per year than nearly every other advanced economy, second only to Portugal. With any effort to expose the decline in living standards to only be drowned out by the illusion of a booming stock market. After Reagan lifted SEC restrictions on corporate stock buybacks in 1982, legalizing what had once been considered market manipulation, corporations began funneling profits into artificially inflating share prices, where under Clinton, as trade liberalization accelerated and corporate profits surged, companies more than doubled their buybacks and expanded stock option programs by over 40%, allowing executives to personally profit from the inflation, where between 1989 and 1998, middle-income families captured just 3% of total stock market gains, but absorbed nearly 40% of the rising consumer debt. And while 22 million jobs did make for a compelling headline, roughly 40 to 45% were low-skill, low-wage service positions. The few high-paying roles that did emerge came not from real economic growth, but from the speculative frenzy of the dot-com bubble. Defined by the success of companies like Apple and Microsoft, the dot-com boom was fueled by venture capitalists pouring billions of dollars into startups under the promise that the internet would revolutionize entire industries. Stock valuations increased so rapidly that in 1999 alone, shares of Qualcomm surged by over 2,600%, while 12 other NASDAQ stocks climbed by at least 1,000%. This new era optimism offered an entire generation the promise of immense opportunity, filled with stock options, rapid career advancement, and the chance to shape a transformative era. But as the demand for technical talent exploded, corporations began claiming a shortage of qualified American workers, giving them a new justification to expand access to cheap foreign labor. In 1990, the H-1B visa program was introduced under the Immigration Act signed by President George H.W. Bush, initially intended to address temporary shortages in high-skill fields such as engineering, computing, and finance. Employers were required to sponsor workers and certify that their hiring would not undercut domestic wages or job opportunities, with an annual cap set at 65,000 visas. However, by the late 1990s, the U.S. Department of Commerce estimated that nearly 28% of all programming positions in the country were filled by H-1B visa holders, where following heavy lobbying from the tech industry, President Bill Clinton signed the American Competitiveness in the 21st Century Act, raising the visa cap to 195,000 between 2000 and 2003. And although the media framed this expansion as a response to domestic skills shortage, a 2003 new immigrant survey found that within identical occupations, permanent residents earned 25.4% more than H-1B visa holders, showing that once again, the program's intent had shifted from solving labor shortages and into suppressing wages. And while the H-1B cap was reset to 65,000 workers following the dot-com bubble, companies have continued to exploit these same loopholes ever since. The most common involves outsourcing firms that hire large numbers of H-1B workers and then contract them out to major tech companies, acting as intermediaries that give corporations access to foreign labor without filling out their own petitions. These firms often use what's known as the cap-exempt category, an exemption originally intended for nonprofit universities, research institutions, and government agencies engaged in scientific or academic work. To bypass the cap, many outsourcing firms create nominal partnerships or shell affiliations with universities and nonprofit research labs, classifying themselves as cap exempt and filling visa petitions year-round. And once approved, these workers can now be rotated between multiple projects or reassigned to different clients without filling new petitions, multiplying the reach of each visa and stretching the intent of the law beyond recognition. And while you're probably thinking, how is this not illegal? Be prepared to be very disappointed. In 2013, two of the largest outsourcing firms, Infosys and Tata Consultancy Services, were investigated by the Department of Labor for using this exact strategy. The investigation found that the average salary for an H-1B worker at Infosys was $70,882, and at Tata, just $65,565, compared to $91,990 for a domestic computer systems analyst. Other partnered firms were saving even more, cutting labor costs by as much as 36 to 41%, or roughly $40,000 to $45,000 less per worker each year. Yet despite clear evidence that the U.S. workers were being undercut, directly violating the H-1B program's supposed protections for wages and working conditions, the Department of Labor ruled it permissible so long as those workers were technically employed through a contractor. A loophole that to this day continues to legalize wage suppression, hidden behind the headlines of mass layoffs.
D'Angelo says his replacement, a worker from India, told him he was making half D'Angelo's salary with no benefits.
I didn't get laid off for lack of work. I got laid off because somebody cheaper could do my job.
We met with this group of workers who all had to train replacements. Leo Pereiro had just received high performance reviews from Disney. When he was called into a personnel meeting, he expected a raise and a promotion.
And instead,
I was given the news that in 90 days, my job was over, and I had to train my replacement.
For years, the nation's workforce has been bombarded with campaigns urging people to learn to code, promoting the belief that programming skills were the path to a stable, high-paying career. Yet according to a study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, among college graduates aged 22 to 27, computer science and computer engineering majors now face some of the highest unemployment rates in the country, 6.1% and 7.5% respectively, more than double the rates of biology and even art history graduates. Recent data also shows that the unemployment among computer occupations climbed from an average of 1.98% in 2019 to 3.02% in 2025, even as the share of IT workers within the H-1B program rose from 32% in 2003 to more than 65% in the last 5 years. So when these companies claim that AI is responsible for these mass layoffs, it's worth comparing these headlines to the actual hiring data. Amazon, for instance, has cut roughly 27,000 positions between 2022 and 2024, with another 10,000 to 12,000 layoffs in 2025 alone, attributed to AI eliminating future roles. Yet in that same year, Amazon ranks number 1, number 11, number 24, and number 49 among the top 100 companies approved for H-1B workers, totaling 14,365 new hires, or more than the number of layoffs this entire year. The second highest employer is Infosys, one of the very outsourcing firms investigated for undercutting U.S. wages, followed closely by Microsoft, which saw its stock price surge after announcing yet another round of AI-related layoffs. Meta ranks fourth, even after publicly shutting down its AI assistant, M, and replacing it with a human-assisted version, where all AI responses are reviewed and edited by a few dozen contractors in Menlo Park, whose hours and oversight remain undisclosed. And according to data released by the White House, the pattern doesn't stop there. One company was approved for 5,189 H-1B workers in 2025, while laying off roughly 16,000 U.S. employees that same year. Another was approved for 1,698 H-1B workers, while cutting 2,400 American jobs in Oregon. A third has reduced its U.S. workforce by 27,000 since 2022, while receiving 25,075 H-1B approvals. which I wonder who that one is. And yet another cut 1,000 American jobs in February, despite being approved for 1,137 H-1B workers for 2025, with each statistic telling the exact same story. The systemic gutting of the American workforce is disguised behind the language of innovation and global competitiveness. And what do we get in return? A narrative that blames workers themselves, insisting that we simply lack the skills and experience to get the job done. Which brings us to the question of whether this new proposal to charge a $100,000 H-1B fee will actually do anything to solve this. The first issue is the national fee exemption for H-1B workers whose role, company, or industry is considered in the national interest and not a threat to the security or welfare of the United States. And when 7 corporations own nearly everything, I don't think there's too much left to say about how flexible that definition can become. The second issue is that this proposal does nothing to address the loopholes, the very reason this program is being abused in the first place. And the third is that in 2017, the US government passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which gave corporations an even bigger incentive to offshore operations. The bill cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, but it also slashed taxes on profits earned by foreign subsidiaries to just 10.5%, later revised slightly to 12.6%, meaning that even if companies were forced to pay this new $100,000 fee, they'd still save far more money sending jobs overseas than just paying American workers. So while I would love for this to be something that actually makes a difference, the unfortunate reality is that this is probably just another attempt to make the nation's workforce hopeful that change is being made, all while absolutely nothing is being done to build the infrastructure needed for the moment that AI truly does begin replacing American workers. We have to recognize that this is a situation where the system is absolutely broken. It is absolutely corrupt. It is filled with so much deceit and greed that it's impossible to know what the truth is. I mean, this entire video showed that everything that we're told, the majority of things are not true. We have been so convinced that we lack the necessary experience and skill sets and knowledge, and then we go and we continuously pursue it, and we're still told that there aren't enough educated Americans. I don't know what else we have to do to prove that we have a competent workforce. And it's disgusting to continuously be told that we're not. It's the fact that Americans are treated just like a bunch of idiots is disgusting. The amount of people, the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of workers that feel like they are absolutely worthless. They can provide no value. They can't support their families. They can't support themselves. They can't even think about starting a family or buying a house or getting an apartment or moving out of their parents' house because they can't get a job, because they can't make more than $18.50 an hour, because they can't just have some peace at mind that I'm not going to get fired next month, even though I just got the job. What kind of foundation can you create when you have absolutely no idea what direction to look in? This video itself, it's almost hard. It's a hard video to watch because it just keeps getting worse. That's what I felt like writing this. It was like, when do I stop? The amount of information I didn't even include. And we're all looking for somebody. Who's going to fix this? So in this situation, because I made this video, you guys are looking to me of what is it that I can do to fix this. The reality is that as individuals, none of us are going to be able to fix this situation. It's going to take us all doing things together. So one of the things that I'm providing is in the description, I have a link to be able to contact your local representative. What you do is you type in your zip code and it's going to show you who it is that you can reach out to. I will say that personally, if I was a viewer and somebody recommended this to me as a solution, I'd be frustrated. The reason that I am even mentioning this, even though my confidence in the government is below negative. Is that I made a video 6 months or so ago about ghost jobs. Exactly to the day, a month later, the Library of Congress used my exact sources, the way in which I scripted the video, and made an entire post about it. And that was their first post about ghost jobs. And, that showed to me that at least people are watching. It's getting out there. Do I know if that Library of Congress post is making a difference? I don't know, but it's some sort of way of at least we're trying to do our best. And at the end of the day, these politicians, all they want is to get reelected. And so if you're flooding them with, hey, to get reelected, this is what you have to fix, at some point they're going to have to address it. The second thing that I've done is I've presented a link to a petition, which is the Truth in Job Advertising and Accountability Act, which is a landmark legislation designed to eliminate fake job ads, protect job seekers' privacy, and restore integrity to the hiring process. It ensures that every public job posting is a genuine opportunity, funded timely and traceable, while holding employers, recruiters, and platforms accountable for deceptive practices. This was first introduced to us, the community, by the founding member, Eric Thompson, in one of our more recent videos, where we got the petition from 300 signatures to over 4,000 signatures. So again, that shows the impact in a week and a half of what our community can do, what it is that we can do together. Other things that I will always mention is what are ways that you can help your neighbor? What are productive ways you can have conversations? What are ways that you can help support the people that you do look up to? What are the ways that you can do the small things that nobody else will notice? Because it'll show to you that you are making a difference, that you are worth something, that you are capable of making a difference. I always mention picking up trash, fixing the floor mats in front of a restaurant, the small things like that, opening the door, holding it for somebody, helping your neighbor, things like that do make a difference. The last thing, if you would like to support me and you want to be a part of the community, I have launched the Patreon. So you get access to the private Discord where we're actively talking about ways that we can contribute to making a difference. You get ad-free content, exclusive podcasts with everyday people just like you. Subscribers of the channel is who I'm interviewing, as well as private videos where I explain my personal thoughts and things that I'm trying to do to overcome some of these situations. And all of this goes to fund the 3 to 6 month road trip I'm going to do throughout the working class cities of the United States and rural towns to give a microphone to the nation to be able to highlight the instances and the difficulties and the experiences that we are facing. I know that this doesn't fix the solution of this video, but at least it's a step forward in some direction. And I'm going to do the best to lead us in a positive direction in a way that we can get somewhere. But I do need your help. And I need to make sure that there are also leaders out there, you as a leader, to pave your path as well. So it's hard not to be discouraged leaving this video, but please do not leave in a negative light. Try to turn this into, at least we have the information to act in a positive direction. So thank you all so much for your support. I hope this is provided value to you. Until next time, bye-bye.